Good morning, everyone. We'll start our study session here for May 29th, 2025, and Councilmember Heredia is online on Zoom. Thank you, Councilmember. Item 1 is to review agendas for Monday, June 2nd council meeting and special council meeting. And council, if you want to go through your agenda, if you have any questions, I know there's a presentation on one or two of them, but are they going to 6A and 6D? Okay. If there are any others, council wants to have staff.
6 a.m. what?
D.
D. Okay. Yeah,
And then we're having a presentation on 6C as well, as item 2B on the study session. So council, you want to proceed with 6A presentation? Is that okay? All right, Jeff and your team, come on up about the grid here.
Yeah, change to Windows 11 and now I won't be able to find the slides. There you go. Morning, Mayor and Council. Jeff McVeigh, Manager of Urban Transformation. With me today is Stephanie Monge. We're here to give you a quick overview of the grid agreements with Soul Trust and the final resolution for the bankruptcy of the grid itself. I'm going to go very quickly, as some of this is just repetitive from when we presented the MOU. Just from the history, most of the council knows the history. We entered our first agreements back in 2017. Through several years of amendments, we got to the point where the developer at the time of the Grid on Main LLC was unable to complete the project. The city issued a notice of default, which led shortly thereafter to that developer filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. As part of the bankruptcy, the city worked with the trustee that was assigned to oversee the disposition of the bankruptcy estate. The trustee worked very closely with the city in that selection process. There was over 11, I believe there was 11 qualified developers that had interest in the project, 4 of which submitted responses to the city. Of the 4 responses, the city and the city and the trustee both agreed that Soul Trust was the best and most capable responsive proposal. Since that point, we came to council and council approved an MOU. That MOU was used as a basis for going before with the settlement of claims with all of the subcontractors and contractors on the project. At this point, everybody has reached a settlement. It has gone through the court, bankruptcy court. As of last week, the bankruptcy court approved the sale of the project pending city council action on this lease and our future purchase agreements. Just as a quick background, just a reminder that as part of the previous development agreement with the grid, the city received $1.7 million in funds that were escrowed specifically to be able to restore the site in the event that the project failed. That work has been completed. Main Street and Pomeroy are both open, and we're actually very pleased that we had those funds. As it was an important element for future developers to know that that work was done and that they did not have to deal with it as they moved forward. Just a quick overview. Soul Trust is newer to Arizona, but they've been developers in Washington State for quite a while. Even though they've only been in Arizona for a couple of years, they've already got over $500 million worth of projects underway. Most notably in Mesa, you'll know them from Forge Tower, which recently opened and is currently leasing up the former Courtyard Towers on Robeson in Maine. Oh, I do not want to skip that last bullet point. After today, or after Monday, maybe today, the developer has successfully negotiated a lease with our anchor first floor tenant, Crust Italian Eatery, which also comes with 2 other concepts of Bombolino's, which is a cocktail bar, and I can't remember the name. I'm sorry, Bombolino's is the deli type style place, and then there's a bird of another feather, but there's also a cocktail bar. I'm sorry, I'm missing the name of the bar. There was a naming competition and everything. when we presented this project to you as part of the MOU, we had a pretty good sense of which direction it was going. There has been a couple minor changes that we want to highlight as part of the final negotiations of the agreements. The agreements would allow Phase 1 to be used as either apartments for residential or as a hotel use. There is some interest and potential, and some possibility that hospitality use could go on Phase 1, so we made it so that that was an allowed use. In the MOU, Soul Trust had contemplated Phase 2 being 12 townhome units. That lower density product does not support or justify the purchase price that was established through the city's appraisal, and that purchase price of around $1.5 million. So as part of this agreement, you'll see that we have contemplated future amendments to the lease for Phase 2 and potentially Phase 3 to allow the developer to work on additional feasibility for alternatives for Phase 2 to allow essentially increased density that then justifies the sale price. That revision to the Phase 2 would require amendment to the lease. The amendment that we are discussing would be related to the number of units, density, heights, things along those lines. It would also include the requirements for when construction would be required to start. By agreement, anytime the construction would start, that would have to be completed within 18 months. So that is an amendment, given that that it is about the particularly just about the units, and that those would meet at least the minimums that we had anticipated as part of the MOU. We are proposing that that is an amendment that can be approved by the city manager without having come back to city council.
Any questions? Ms. Goforth.
Remind me, is Phase 1 the existing building that's sitting
Yes,
there?
I'm sorry. Phase 1 is the existing building, and Phase 1 is the completion of the existing building.
And Phase 2 is what?
There's the dirt, essentially the dirt lot between Phase 1 and the garage is Phase 2. Phase 3 is essentially the narrow strip that goes along the north side and east side of the Pomeroy garage. That was essentially the ring of townhomes that wrapped the garage.
So the ground lease that we're entering into addresses all three phases?
All three phases.
Okay, but allows for revision
Yes.
of 2 and 3 based on the possible outcome of a feasibility study?
So,
Phase-
yes. So Phase 2, originally Phase 2 had, I believe it was 24 units, apartments that were included in the original approval. The current proposal, the current idea of 12 units just wasn't going to support the purchase price, but we call it feasibility study, but the timing just wasn't sufficient enough for us to be able to get in and allow Soul Trust at the time to be able to put together better concepts for the number of units and for price out the higher density today. The agreement is built in such a way, though, that Phase 2 and the resolution to Phase 2 has to be completed before Phase 1 is purchased. The agreement's set up with essentially a backstop. Phase 1, by agreement, would have to be completed within 9 months. Upon completion, the developer would have 6 months then to close on the property, which is the outside date by which we would have to have an amendment to the agreement for Phase 2 to be addressed. If that amendment is not completed by that time frame, Phase 2 essentially and Phase 3 drop out of the lease and just revert back to the cities. And then the city would have the ability to go out and see if any other developers would have an interest in a project there.
So they have 9 months from the execution date to,
Yes.
okay, thank you.
Jeff,
Yes.
when is the execution date?
The day that everybody signs the lease. So
Sooner than later?
if Dan could get up here and talk, he would tell us that he wants to sign the lease the day that he intends to sign the lease today. He will hope that the city manager will sign the lease the day that it is approved on Monday, if approved on Monday.
Mr. Adams?
If I could just a little more on that. They have their lease with Crust. Requires Crust to be open in a very short order. I believe October is the date they're shooting for. So they want to get in the building and get construction going as fast as they possibly can.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, you mentioned completion within 6 months, and then I heard 18 months. So 2 questions here. Are we defining completion as a certificate of occupancy is issued?
Mayor, Councilmember Adams, yes, that is correct.
Okay.
And I want to make sure because Mayor, when I talked to you yesterday, I mixed up my dates. It's 9 months to complete construction,
on
phase
one.
one.
Okay.
At the completion of construction, there is a 6-month window to complete the close on purchase of the property. So
Okay,
in total,
understood.
there's a 15-month window for them to purchase the property, which is our backstop for when phase two's amendment would be required to be completed.
Okay, thank you. And then you mentioned 18 months. Is that on phase 2?
So on phase two, we would have to establish when commencement of construction would be required as part of that amendment. But no matter when commencement of construction is set, the agreements currently say that completion of construction would have to happen within 18 months.
Okay, and I assume that the builder developer is in agreement with that, feels it can be accomplished. What happens if we have some unforeseen event, material shortages, labor, so forth and so on? What are our outs on that if the developer comes back and says, hey, I can't get lumber, I can't get this? What do we do then?
Mayor, Councilmember Adams, the discussion of force majeure provisions within our lease have changed since the pandemic, and that now includes discussion of things like pandemics or global supply chain changes that could affect the ability to deliver in that time frame.
Okay, thank you. And then last question. I recall originally there was an idea to build atop the existing garage. Is that off the table? That's scrapped? We're not doing that?
Mayor, Councilmember Adams, from very early on, the city's position had changed that was a risk that was beyond maybe what we should have taken in the first place. And we, surprisingly enough, every developer that responded agreed with us on that position and did not want to take that risk either.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, I'll quickly run through this. I already mentioned that phase one would be completed within 9 months. Phase two, again, we will work on an amendment very quickly. Phase three, we anticipate phase three will stay as 12 row homes as discussed with the developer. Again, though, as part of an amendment, we would have to establish what that commencement of construction date is so that it's sequenced well between the phases. During construction, each phase would have a construction lease rate of $5,000, just a flat rate, $5,000. It's important to note that rate is below what a market lease rate would be for construction. That is to reflect that the city essentially has taken the position that we will not sell this property to the developer until it has been completed. It has been the developer's desire and wish from day one for the city just to sell the property to them. So as a reflection of the only reason that we are leasing it is to ensure that completion, we were more open to a lease rate that is favorable at the beginning. However, if we have not sold the property within that 180 days, 6 months following completion of construction, the lease rate would go directly to a market rate lease. Again, we're looking at three phases, and we'd sell the project in 3 phases upon completion of construction for each phase. The total purchase price between the 3 phases is just under $3 million. That is the appraised value, and that is based on the appraisal that the city commissioned. The first phase purchase price is $1,015,000. There is a non-refundable deposit of $285,000 that will be required at execution of the lease. It's important to note that $285,000 is just a little bit more than the cost of the electric work that must be completed to be able to serve phase one. About $283,000 worth of electric work still needs to be completed. This is a deposit that is reflective that we need to be able to offset those costs no matter what. And that's why it's non-refundable at the start of the lease. The only reason it could be refunded is if for some reason the city fails or just determines not to sell the property to the developer. The final 2 phases, phase 2 and 3, have a total purchase price of just under $2 million. currently valued at 1.5 for Phase 2 and 450,000 for Phase 3. The lease amendment that we will need to work on does give the ability to reapportion between the two phases that purchase price. There is, while we don't know how many units or the density of the project for Phase 2, there is some potential that there could be shifting between the two phases. Potentially Phase 3 would be a little bit higher purchase price, Phase 3 would be a little bit lower purchase price, or vice versa. This just gives us the flexibility to consider those reallocation based on the development that they're proposing. However, in no instance could that reallocation go less than the $1.97 million that is appraised for Phase 2 and Phase 3. I've already mentioned this, so quickly, 6 months after completion of construction to close, Soul Trust is responsible for all closing costs, and they will be subject to a declaration of property restrictions, as well as all future. So this is essentially deed restrictions that go with the land. Those deed restrictions essentially require the Soul Trust and any future owners to use all City of Mesa utilities, including solid waste. It does include a prohibited use list that they are subject to follow, that's in addition to just complying with the allowed uses of the zoning ordinance. It includes things such as tattoo parlors, non-chartered financial institutions, and pawn shops. If there are non-standard public improvements in the right-of-way, the developer is obligated to maintain those non-standard improvements. And the declaration of property restrictions includes essentially an encroachment agreement that allows the balconies of the project to overhang the public's right-of-way on Main Street. There is also a parking license agreement, the form of which will be attached to the lease and that we'll execute at the completion of each phase. That will allow the required parking for the residential and commercial users to work within the Pomeroy Garage. For Phase 1, that would be a minimum of 76 spaces, so essentially 1 space per unit with a maximum of 1.5 spaces per unit. For Phase 2, it's a minimum of 24 spaces. That's assuming that it's a 12-unit townhome, and it'd be 2 spaces per unit. This is another thing that would be, we'd be able to modify through the amendment, with the idea that the ratios that we would look at are no less than 1 space per apartment unit and no less than 2 spaces per townhome or row home. The parking license would have a 50-year term. For the first 10 years of that term, the parking rate would be $10 per space per month, and then from that point forward, it would be whatever has been adopted by council. Currently, that rate is $45 per space per month. Excuse me. Through the license, we are also committing that the city will maintain sufficient public parking, time-limited public parking, to meet the needs of the businesses within the building, so customers of Crest. Now, not necessarily related to this ground lease, what council is considering, but important to your discussion and decision is terms that are part of the bankruptcy and just the resolution of the bankruptcy in general. As part of the bankruptcy, the city would be waiving any of our financial claims against the bankruptcy estate. We had approximately $774,000 in monetary claims against the estate. That included around $500,000. The majority of that was around $500,000 worth of public electric infrastructure work that had been completed to serve Phase 1, but the previous developer had never actually paid the bill for. It also includes the resolution of lawsuits that have been filed against the city. Many subcontractors filed claims against the city. Most of those claims, by volume, have been already dropped, but there are still 2 state court cases pending that are essentially against the city's fee interest ownership in the land. Resolution of this bankruptcy case would require the dropping with prejudice of any lawsuits against the city, as well as no future lawsuits could be filed against the city. And the city essentially makes the same commitment that we won't file lawsuits against any of the subcontractors or contractors of the project.
Mr. McVeigh, I think Mr. Smith, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I just saw a typo on this. It's the Arizona Superior Court is where the lawsuits are filed, and they're lien lawsuits. So that's the nature of the lawsuit. So it's tremendously beneficial, obviously, for us to be able to, as part of this package, wrap up all the litigation.
Also, as I mentioned it before, but the city will complete Phase 1 electric work. That is essentially all the infrastructure necessary to serve Phase 1, but also most of that infrastructure, transformers, primary feed lines will also be will also serve Phase 2 and Phase 3. So any work done as part of this electric work, there will be a benefit for future phases. That is a cost of approximately $285,000 that the city will bear. We will also work with with Soul Trust in subdividing the property to create those 3 parcels to be able to have the separate phases and work through any zoning revisions, essentially to work through the approvals for a revised Phase 2. It's been a long and interesting process to get to this point, but we are very pleased to say that on May 20th, the bankruptcy court did approve the sale of this per the trustees' sale order, and that it's just contingent on council's action on Monday. With that, we're happy to take any questions.
Council, any questions? Mr. Heredia? Ms. Duff?
No questions.
Thank you, sir.
I'm trying to remember, what is the financial construct of this? Does the city have a note with the bank? Is the city holding this property independently? I can't even remember back when, who even held the property.
Mayor, Councilmember Duff, the city owns the property. The property was subject to a long-term lease with the grid at Mesa. It was part of the city essentially sent a notice of default to the grid at Mesa on the lease and as well as their development agreement. It has been the city's position that we are essentially the owner of all the property and all the assets, but for the sake of the bankruptcy proceedings and to actually avoid what would probably be much longer and more costly litigation, we have worked and accepted that the assets, essentially the building, is something that is still available for the bankruptcy estate to sell as part of this. So we are the fee simple owner of the land, and will continue to be the fee simple owner of the land until such time that they complete their phases and are able to close on the property.
And who's the holder of the assets, the building, right now?
As soon as this agreement is finalized, Soul Trust will become the owner of the assets, essentially the vertical improvements.
So right now, the bank is holding the asset? Oh,
Right now is the trustee who is
The trustee.
essentially administering the bankruptcy estate on behalf of the developer and their lender.
okay. All right. And then a simple question. How many spaces does the Pomeroy garage have?
In total, it's around 850 spaces.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Let's go forth.
So does the appraisal, does it include that, the assets that were built? Does it include, what is the appraisal?
The appraisal, Mayor, Councilmember Goforth, the appraisal is, it's just based on land alone.
It's just the land?
Yes.
Yes, so the appraisal, we had land value only at today's value. We did not include any structures on there, and we did not include the Pomeroy garage in that value.
Interesting. So they're just getting the built asset. It's part of the deal. And then you said most of the claims are infrastructure that we've done, electrical infrastructure. How was that set up with the previous owner? Were we going to be reimbursed? How?
Mayor, Councilmember Goforth, it's a common deal that we've set up with our electric utility that they essentially take a look at what is going to be built, and they then project what the revenues would be off of those the number of those units. So our original thought was that there was going to be 200 units of residential here. That 200 units would generate a certain amount of electric use, and that electric use would result in a certain amount of revenue. And that revenue then would be essentially a credit against the utilities work that they had completed. So there was an agreement for a revenue credit of around $500,000 that then would have been provided over the next 5 years by the previous developers, finishing the project and having residents there. With the previous developer failing, we never got the units and the electric uses, so we were going to, as a city, we would always have been made whole if this had not failed originally. This is just our opportunity to take the land sale proceeds and help, and then offset the costs that we've already borne, as well as any future costs.
Thank you.
Mr. Adams?
A quick question. The existing structure, at what stage of construction is it? Is mechanical in? Is it sheet rock? Where is it at?
Mayor, Councilmember Adams, I think it's around 60% complete.
Okay.
There's some mechanical. I believe there's still quite a large amount of mechanical that has to be completed. There is some sheetrock and there's some not. It's depending on which floor or where you are, it will determine what level of completeness you are at. The first floor of the restaurant space is actually quite a long, well along, and will be the quickest for them to complete.
Okay, thank you. I guess my observation is, having had some experience in the material supply industry, albeit years ago, this is obviously very complex. And it seems to me that the deal that's been worked out is probably in the best interest of everybody, primarily the city. So that's just my view on it.
And I'd like to chime in and thank you for all the work. This has been years in the making, and it's been a huge, huge project to pull this all together and allow it to go forward. And we're so thankful to be at this point. And thank you for all your work on this. I know it was a heavy lift.
It's been an interesting lift, that's for sure.
All right, council, Mr. Smith, Mr. Brady, anything you want to weigh in on?
I would just say, echo Councilor Duff's comments. This has probably been one of the most frustrating projects we've all been involved in for some time. We had great aspirations for this mixed-use development downtown, lots of pretty pictures, lots of excitement, high school bands, everything. And here we are, and at one point, we were stuck with a shell. I mean, it wasn't even, I don't even know what percent that would have been. It sat there for a long time. So I think it's remarkable. Frankly, this is a big relief that we're gonna be able to take a project at 60%, have a developer come in and finish it off. I think otherwise, if it fell back to the city, which was always an option, we could have played hardball and said, we want it all, we're taking the land back, we're taking the improvements, and we're gonna fight everybody off on it. But then what? What are we gonna do with it? So it's a long road, but I think Jeff and his team and Jim and his folks supporting optimism rises again. So we're gonna see how far that takes us.
Thank you, Jim, for your work, and your team has been significant as well.
I just have a couple more questions. And you talked about the phase one and completion in 9 months, right, on phase one. Then a 6 months to close on that.
Correct.
And purchase the property. And then between phase one and phase two to start construction, is there any reason if the developer wanted to start phase two during phase one, he could do that?
They certainly could.
Okay. So do you need any time?
Mayor, thank you.
Anything from council about between phase one and phase two? 15 months seems a little further out. Do you want to have a window in there where you go back to the developer and say you have, after 15 months, can we move forward on phase two a little faster?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. That great discussion topic. We know the time frame by which we have to have an amendment to the lease completed so that phase two can move forward. What we don't have today, it is that lease amendment contemplates that we would have to agree upon when construction of phase two would start. It is our position, will always be our position, the sooner the better that phase two starts, so that we just keep this thing rolling. But if council had a position on timing between the completion of phase one and the start of phase two, we would be happy to take that direction and move forward and use that as we complete those negotiations of the amendment.
Has the developer indicated any time frame or would they like to? Or, you know, I'd like to put some guardrails around it to help move phase 2 a little faster along. But I don't want to have the same issue we're having today.
Mayor, the one thing that we can say with confidence is that we won't have the same thing that happens today, or because we will not sell the property to them until we have a completed project. I think the one challenge that we do face is that the issue with phase 2 came very late in our negotiations, and essentially with 1 week to go, and so we had to find a way to be able to address phase 2. I don't know that the Soul Trust is in a position today to be able to say what they believe that their start time would be. I'll just turn around and look at Mr. Duffus and say, I'm going to assume that his
smiling at
intent is
least.
to move forward with phase 2 as quickly as possible.
Okay.
Well, and as just doing that, if Mayor from Council, if I could provide some context, because the bankruptcy case, like many litigation cases, went slowly until the end, and then it sort of went at light speed. And so Soul Trust has worked with us throughout this process, and they were willing to provide reasonable guardrails as far as the timing. But then they realized that they needed to have probably a higher density onto the phase 2. Normally, we would have, taken another extra month or 2 right now to negotiate that. But we're in a situation where the bankruptcy court has approved a final order, and there's a deadline next week for council to approve or not approve the agreement to move this forward. Otherwise, it will unwind. And so the City of Mesa and Soul Trust are now in that situation. So really, we've both found ourselves in a situation where we need to sort of move this forward and then sort of resolve the second phase, in the next 9 months. So I'll say this: they agreed to reasonable timeframes within the MOU. They're moving forward. They're looking to do a higher density, which is something the City of Mesa historically was interested in that phase also. So they're actually moving towards what we had wanted originally in that phase. And so, we can always come back at a study session and talk to council about that amendment, even though it'll be approved by the city manager, and so that you have a sense of it. But I just want to, on behalf of Soul Trust, because I feel like there's been a tremendous amount of work that's occurred in the last 60 days for this to get resolved. It's been at light speed in the last 60 days. And so they have been very amenable to finding ways to resolve issues, both for the bankruptcy case, but also for the development agreement. So I think we'll be able to come back to council at a study session or provide information to council that will, on the deadlines in the future.
Yeah, great.
Mayor,
Yes.
I appreciate your concerns, wanting to move it forward. We're all wanting to see this project come to completion. And I appreciate the guardrails that we do have in this MOU on the current agreement. But I hate to push into a tighter timeline. Supply markets and financial markets and economy and everything is kind of in flux right now. And I think we have to not force a time that, I'd like to have a little bit of breathing room so that it has to be done because if we tighten it up more, it's going to be like maybe forcing a situation.
I'm not asking that to happen, just so you
okay.
know. I just want to have the conversation about it so as we move forward. The important thing is 6A is approving and authorizing the city manager into this agreement and ground lease and option to purchase. That's what we're doing on Monday. So
Mayor, our takeaway will be that for phase 2, that we will work with the developer to move phase 2 forward as fast as is reasonably possible, given any market conditions.
yeah, and I think council needs to hear the whole conversation about it too, but it's important to get the grid going and the eateries there, and so you're in full support of the whole council in doing that.
Yes.
Yes.
I
Ms.
guess
Gould.
my only concern would be that you make a decision at some point, and now I'm probably confusing myself on when does that amendment have to be done? You don't necessarily have to agree, on a completion, but how long do we have to negotiate? the second amendment?
Mayor, Councilmember Goforth, the amendment for the second phase has to be negotiated by the close of sale on phase one.
Oh, it does, okay.
So that's where we give an outside date of 15 months. It's 9 months to complete construction, then there's a 6 months window to close. We've had enough experience with selling property that oftentimes you need a little bit of wiggle room to clear up any matters of title, whether there's a lien that got placed on the property that shouldn't have been, to clear that. So that's why we have 6 months. Our anticipation is that closing is going to happen very quickly after completion of construction. But in any case, before they complete or we close on phase one, we have to have phase two amendment completed.
And the closing will just be the purchase of phase one? We're not,
Correct.
okay. Okay, that makes sense to me.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McVeigh. Would council like to hear something about 6D? Presentation on 6D. Sam?
Great. Good morning, Mayor and Council. I am here today to talk to you about the public safety personnel retirement system. So it's something that we do annually. So we were in the same place last year discussing this. So it's our annual funding policy that we are presenting for adoption. My name is Sam Schultz. I'm with the Office of Management and Budget as the Assistant Director. So to give some background about PSPRS, PSPRS is a state required by law. It was a pension system that was set up by Arizona State statute in 1968 to support a retirement program for firefighters and police officers. Later on, the state also approved and established a 9-member board of trustees that oversees the financial decisions within the PSPRS pension system. And today, this pension system is around approximately $23 billion and oversees about 300 agency employers. So with the pension policy, PSPRS today is made up of 3 tiers, and the tiers are based upon when you were hired. For the pension policy, what we're looking at today is strictly for Tier 1 and Tier 2 of our unfunded liability. So within this slide, you'll see kind of the date ranges of each of those tier structures of when the hiring date was. So when this pension policy was put into place of a funding policy to accept the assets and liabilities, it went hand in hand with the development of the Tier 3 personal services retirement plan. And the Tier 3 was a change to ensure the financial stability of the fund moving forward. So it changed a couple of the dynamics of the pension itself for the contributions. So with that plan, it's a 50-50 contribution between employer and the employee on the normal cost side of it. And then it starts to cap off that Tier 1 and Tier 2 structure to then moving forward, it would be those Tier 3s. So with today, we'll be talking about the Tier 1 and Tier 2. So for the funding policy itself, what we're asking for council is to take action on adopting a funding policy for those people hired before the 2017, and for you all to accept the employee's share of assets and liabilities. With that plan, we will then kind of go through in the next slides of how we're going to then meet the funding policy to be 100% funded come the actuarial date that we have agreed on with the state. So with our pension funding policy, we have a couple objectives. With each objective, we have a maintained stability of contributions. We'll go a little bit more into that in the next slide. But what we're looking to do is to maintain a pension stability fund. We cap that at $20 million, and we'll hit that $20 million in 25-26. The second one is meet the funding requirements. Within our funding policy, even though we've changed our contribution model, with our funding policy, we state that we will, at minimum, contribute the annual required option or annual required contribution that are per the actuarial reports. Each of those reports are attached to this presentation as well. So you guys can see that from the actuarial reports from Foster & Foster, who they contract with PSPRS. And then the last component is meeting that funding and ratio target timeline. So for City of Mesa, when this change occurred, we were given the option between a 20-year and a 30-year amortization schedule. The city decided to meet in the middle, went with the 25-year option. So for us, we're looking to be 100% funded on our Tier 1, Tier 2 pension plans by June 30th of 2042. So we have a couple funding strategies here. The first one is to stabilize investment. So this is something that we'll kind of go into. In 2022, the city made a conscious effort to start combating some of that unfunded liability. So what we looked at doing was stabilizing our pension payment, and we wanted to move a lot of those contributions up forward in the forecast so that we were able to take advantage of the interest on investment growth within the pension fund. Today, that for the 25-26 budget, that contribution is estimated projected at 102 to 103 million. This is an increase from the prior year, and what we do is we do take advantage of when there's changes within either the FTE count or within the salaries. We adjust that into the contribution to ensure that we're accounting for those liabilities appropriately. So the big thing that changed with this year, of course, is that public safety benchmark, and in adjusting our contribution to account for that change. And then the last thing is also with the marijuana excise tax, that is something that we fully put towards the contribution. We have seen a stabilization in that. Right now, we are projected to collect $3.7 million this year. It's about a 2.4 increase from the prior year. So we're starting to see that stabilize off of inflation. And then when we talked about that pension stabilization fund, we'll be hitting that 20 million in fiscal year 25-26. And then as we talk about that, we'll continue to reevaluate these range boundaries depending upon changes, whether it's new FTEs or additional pay adjustments within the benchmarks.
So Sam, real quick. So Mayor and Council, and we really haven't changed the policies from where we've done in the past, but we're just updating the numbers. So I want you to think about when we made the decision initially to go to the 25-year term to pay, to get to 100%, we were faced with this inclining contribution that we would be making every year up to the, what's it, 20, is the year, final year?
2042.
2042, right? It was an inclining contribution that we'd have to be making each year. We made the decision to go to the stabilized contribution investment. How long ago, Sam?
It was 2022.
2022. So meaning we took a big jump, but it also built into the budget this kind of stable payment. So if you think about more of a flat payment than an inclining payment over the next several years. So it's significant, but by doing that and calculating, Sam calculating, figuring out, okay, if we had a set payment that is kind of as flat as possible, recognizing we have to adjust it for salary increases or significant increases in the number of personnel. But overall, it stays and it's built into the forecast. It's established throughout the budget for a significant amount of time. We've done that. And then in addition to doing that, in the past, we have been impacted by a variety of other variables that we don't control. And that's what we have to keep reminding the councils. We don't control the outcome of the investments and how all that's done, the decisions by the board. But we then have to make, we have to make up the difference if investments in their portfolio don't reach their goals, then we have to make up the difference. In the past, we had seen some huge, from year to year, some significant variations in those impacts to us. And so we've built, if you would, kind of in the nomenclature we use in other funds, kind of a fund balance, and then we call it the pension stabilization fund of it'll be $20 million in the next year's adopted budget, and we're kind of capping it at that amount. We've been building that up over the years. So you can see if, in effect, you have this long-term, fairly stable payment of over $100 million a year, and then we have sitting below that or aside to that, a $20 million reserved in case something happens with investments or the actuarial changes and people start living a lot longer. I mean, it could be a variety of things. So we have that to provide that, to absorb any impacts in the overall contributions that we need to make. So we're trying to create a stable payment over the long period of time to get to the 100%. And we've created this fund balance, the stabilization fund, to help us mitigate against unforeseen impacts or unforeseen cost impacts that are passed down to us from the state. So we think or frankly, and when I say the state, it's not just the board, it could be the legislature too. So we're trying to mitigate against those unforeseen incidents in the future. So this is our plan. I think we're somewhat comfortable now that we've reached that $20 million goal of the stabilization fund. We've been building that up over several years. We feel like 20 million is a good number to stop at and kind of hold to. We present this as a conversation we have every year with the rating agencies about pension liability. I think they do appreciate the fact that we're at a stable payment and we have this reserve to absorb against any unforeseen changes in the future. So
I'll just add that, you know, we didn't create this liability, this PSPRS liability. The investment portfolio for PSPRS created it, and then passed the liability on to municipalities to make up the gap. And that's what we, you know, what did we initially get, Chris? Like a $900 million originally? And then somewhere in there, and then came our amortization process that we did 7 years ago. We got 17 years left of payment. So.
Yep.
Correct, Mayor.
Yep.
Okay.
But we've got a plan and we've got it built into the budget now. It's in the forecast. You can see it's significant, right? $100 million a year. And it got adjusted. We had to tweak it again this year because we saw that significant impact on the benchmarking the salaries. Well, that has an effect, right? And we had to do it when we added all the additional personnel during the sales tax. So we make those adjustments, but the larger portion of that, instead of doing this inclining scale every year growing, we just kind of said, nope, we got to build it into the budget right now, absorb it, and carry it through for the next 17 years.
Okay. Sam,
Correct.
go ahead.
Thank you. And to add to Chris's points, when we made that change, we talked to council about why we wanted to move those investments up earlier. The more that we can get that growth on it earlier from the interest on investments, the better that that contribution will do. So when we presented that, $1 million invested with the PD contribution, then from unfunded liability, adjusted by 1.8 million. So there's benefits into that of how we were trying to address and tackle that unfunded liability.
Okay, Ms.
I would
Goforth.
just like to say, this is what I was talking about on Tuesday. Thank you for your comments and clarity, Chris. How you can, you know, make such a complex issue seem so simple. Anyway, thank you very much.
Great. So the next slide showcases where we're currently sitting with our assets and liabilities. What you'll see is our funded status has continued to improve. So you'll see about a percentage and a half increase on our funded status. You will see that our unfunded liability has increased slightly. That gap is starting to close to where we're going to take away that negative amortization. So we're starting to see those improvements with those contributions that we have made to then kind of hit that delta where it'll start to adjust down, and you'll see that unfunded liability continue to decrease. One thing to also note about that liability, when Chris talks about changes that are out of our control, one of the things that we looked at for 23-24 is the PSPRS board did change the discount rate or the investment, assumed investment returns from 7.3 down to 7.2. So that was less revenue assumed within the forecast of our assets, which then increased our liabilities of that. Though there was no change of our contribution or positioning, what they did was they just adjusted what was assumed as revenue into the forecast. So those types of changes affect us that we're adjusting and trying to balance with this. I will say we do forecast conservatively when we start to plan out, when we planned out the initial flat payment, as we plan out that 102 to 103 $1 million contribution. We look at current investment. So if we're looking at fiscal year 24-25, where we're currently sitting, as of the end of March, our investment returns are projected at 5.3%, so still below the 7.2%. But there's changes and volatility within the market today that's going to be ever changing for the next couple of months as we go through, based upon decisions on the federal side, whether it's the Federal Reserve, federal government on the tariffs. Those are causing big swings in Vs within the market. One example is with April, we saw a dip, and then within May, that's already returned. So it's something that when we talk about this pension plan, this is a long-term plan. We're not going to make any rash decisions on what's occurring in the market on the short term. We're looking for the stabilization of that into the forecast. And one of the things that we do with that as well too is when we're forecasting out the next 2 or 3 years, we do adjust our investment assumed returns to account for some slowdown, just like in our budget when we talk about the revenues. So we mirror that within this policy, as well as some additional payroll growth. So I jumped a little ahead of this, but with the outlook, we continue to monitor where the market conditions are and the liability growth based upon changes of the investment returns, changes within the policies. When Chris talked about changes of the demographic, those all have impacts within our liability. Second piece is the state and federal impacts. There are bills within the state where they can change policies or change dynamics within the tier structures, whether it's identifying different benefits or little things like that. So for this fiscal year, one of the things that popped up was healthcare for tier 3. So those additions and changes will have impacts within our liability numbers. And then similar to this upcoming year, we talk about the public safety benchmark. We do look and account for FTE changes, whether we're bringing on new fire stations or changes within PD and fire, and then as well as that salary growth or overtime growth as well too, as those will have impacts on what those liabilities. And the last one, today tier 3 is 100% funded, but we'll continue to monitor that because there is a legacy rate component connected to that then helps funds the city contribution on the tier 1, tier 2 structure. With that, we'll monitor the growth to ensure that we're meeting our goals of contribution within tier 1, tier 2, so that we can meet that 100% funded status by 2042. And just to kind of reiterate what that 100% funded status means, it means that once we're 100% funded, then that fund, in theory, should in perpetuity cover all the living and retired personnel within that pension plan of those tiers.
Sam, Councilmember Heredia, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Thank you.
And I do want to go back a couple slides on one thing to add, and I want to give council credit. When we made this change in 2022 to increase our funded status, and I think it goes into, here you'll see our 53 and 52% funded status. When we made that change, in 2022, the market in investment returns was a negative 4.2%, so there's a large loss in that market. So even though here you see our funded status increasing for 2022, because we've made this change, we were able to continue to improve on that. So if we had not made this change, our funded status would have been closer to 50% on fire and about 48% on police, so about $65 million difference. So with the effort that the city is making, we're heading in the right direction from a long-term standpoint by 2042 to ensure that we meet these goals. But if we had not made this change, it would continue to put us further back, which then impacts our forecast in the future that we would then have to catch up on. So, we're able to invest more today, or we were able to invest more in the past, and we're starting to, get those interest on investments and growth with those investments or those contributions. So with this slide, you'll see a 10-year history of kind of where we sat. So in 2020 and then 2021, there was a large investment return that fiscal year. And then as we talked about with 2022, we saw a sharp decrease in investments, but that's when we made that concerted effort of doing those additional contributions. And we're continuing to see that increase due to that change. So this last slide, we talk about the funded status. By us maintaining and all variables kind of remain the same, it showcases to let you guys know with that 100 to 103 million that we'll be able to reach that 100% funded status by 2042. When you look at this, we talk about forecasting conservatively. You can see between that 2025 to 2028 kind of a smaller slope comparatively to 29 and beyond. And that's where we start to account for some additional payroll growth, some additional investment losses, just to be prepared in case things don't come in as planned. And it gives us some flexibility. So if things do come in as planned, it just means we're in a better position. So next steps is for council to take action on adopting the funding policy for the June 2nd. What occurs after adoption is we then post this onto our website, so the funding policy is available year-round. And then we also send this over to PSPRS to showcase that the City of Mesa and the council has accepted their assets and liabilities, and that we have a funding policy to, ensure that we're going to be 100% funded out of our Tier 1, Tier 2 PSPRS pension plans by 2042.
Thank you, Sam. Questions, council? Mr. Adams?
Are the investment decisions made by that board of trustees, or do we have any input into where these funds are invested for safety and security?
So from the investment strategy itself, they do contract with consultants. With those consultants, then the board is presented the strategy of it. We don't have say into where that is going, but we're not in the business of doing those types of investments. So we are contracting with those consultants to ensure that they're creating a structure to incur less loss within those balances. So
That's a conservative view. So are we overall?
No, so the board makes the decision on the consultant, hires they don't,
Okay.
it's a board appointed by the legislature, the governor, and I can't remember all the different appointees, but then they go out and contract to invest the funds. And how they hold them accountable, how well they do, that's based on the board's decision. So no, we are by state constitution based state legislation, we are in part of this process, and we kind of just live by their rules and their outcomes, and we have to try to respond to them.
Have you overall been satisfied with what they've been doing?
I don't think we probably should comment on that. No.
Okay, understood.
I will say recently, Mayor, Councilmember Adams, recently we have seen some diversification changes within their asset allocation.
It's gotten better, but it
has gotten
hasn't
better.
traditionally.
But, one of the things that PSPRS from a metrics, they'll compare against the different pension plans across the nation to benchmark themselves. So at the moment, in the past couple of years, they have performed within the top 10% comparatively to other pension plans. Comparably to market, there's some debate between that, whether or not we could receive additional growth. But with it, there is some larger diversification comparatively to where we were 20 years ago. So, most recently when we talk about that 5.3%, a lot of that change was in the international equity market, where they saw those growths. From the U.S. equity public market, that's where they actually saw a decline. When we talk about some of the tech companies, there was a 2% decrease on that for the year over year. There was increases within gold. So there's quite a variety of allocation that they have. They also look at different investments with like the Taiwan Semiconductor. That one was down this year, but Alibaba was up. So there is a wide range of what those consultants then start to invest and look at that asset allocation.
So can you say again what's the difference with Tier 3?
Mayor, council member, go forth. For Tier 3, the big change of it was moving similar to where ASRS is today, to where there's a 50-50 contribution. So for the normal cost, if right now the percentage is around 9%, the employee contributes 9% and the city contributes 9% to ensure the financial stability of that pension fund. For Tier 1 and Tier 2, the employee contribution was capped at 7.65, and then anything above and beyond that would then be covered by the city contribution. Additionally, with Tier 3, there was different restrictions on age limits. There's the 55-year requirement of when individuals can retire. So the years of service will still be the 20 to 25 years, but the age of when you can collect on that is different. So there's different structures of that of when individuals could retire and start collecting on the pension fund itself. And then lastly, there was different salary adjustments and maximums as well with Tier 3. So they capped the overall salary at a higher rate, at a lower amount. That does change and fluctuate with the market. We have seen that go up of what the new maximum is. So we think, when we see the first Tier 3 employee retire, because the first one would have been 2017. So if we look at it from a 20, 25 years from now, you would be looking at around that 2042 date. The maximum that they put in for that salary will probably have no effect at that point. But the big change was the 50-50 contribution as well as the age of when they can collect on that retirement.
Thank you.
It's kind of complex, isn't it? It is, but Mr. Vice Mayor is not having a problem with it. But at the end of the day, I think the conversation is important because of our liabilities as a city on this unfunded amount and our amortization towards paying this off. And it is complex, and, appreciate having the amortization schedule for paying this off. I wish we could have paid it off sooner, but again, it was over an $800 million hit to us back in the day, and consequently, we didn't have, we're not going to pay off $800 million unless we had a rainy day fund. So, Mr. Brady?
Most cities had to mortgage their city buildings, and it was, it was a few cities had done, but Mesa has been around for a long time. We have a lot of employees. And so, the big city is just impossible for that to happen, so.
Yeah. Well, and in fairness about when we talk about debt and liability, in our city, we have our general obligation bonds, our utility bonds, and the PRS liability, and we're very good financially about paying those off. So I think it's important to have that conversation. Council, is there any other things on the agenda for Monday you want to discuss? Ms. Pillsbury?
Well, I'm just wondering if we're leaving Park North on the consent, or if are we gonna have a presentation on that at some point, or we just haven't talked about that at the dais with the council. I'm just wondering what.
8A, I'll defer to the Vice Mayor.
I think Monday would be the best day to discuss that, because then we're going to have people coming in that are here. I don't think we have any Park North reps here or the community, so.
So maybe at the study session?
Have study session or at the council meeting, because we might as well pull it off the agenda. Thank you for reminding me.
All right, thank you. And talk about investments, our treasurer, Mark Cute.
So here.
Yeah, Mark, you want to come on up and introduce yourself? And when we talk about investment and portfolios, you're investing our city's money every day, right?
That is correct, Mayor.
Yeah. And how much are you investing every day?
Well,
Or what's
the
our investment portfolio?
investment portfolio is about $1.5 billion right now. We just did receive our recent bond proceeds, so.
Okay. Well, very good. Then we're going to talk about the secondary property tax, kind of in your purview.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I know this.
And we lose Mr. Adams.
I know.
Mr. Hughes, listen, hold on just one.
You had me confused there. I thought we were going to do a investment. It's good. I just.
Well, I think it parlays into
No,
the
you did it nice. It
conversation.
was so smooth. I didn't see it coming.
I was ready.
Yeah, but it's good. Mark could jump up there.
Well, when we talk about PRS and their investment, I think it's
no.
more important that he focuses on, that's what we control as
Well, he could, yeah, absolutely.
a council and city.
Mayor, they have different statutes as well, so they're allowed to invest in a variety of other things that we're not allowed to. Yeah, correct.
Well, Mr. Hute, I think the time is yours,
Okay, thank you.
okay? Thank you.
Well, good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. I'm Mark Hute, City Treasurer, here to present the fiscal year 2026 secondary property tax information. All right, and here are the main highlights. So the city is proposing no change to the current tax rate. And with that, the annual cost to the median homeowner would be $160, which is an increase of $8 from last year. For the whole year, yeah. For the whole year. Okay, just as a quick reminder, the city levies secondary property taxes to pay for general obligation bonds that have been authorized by the voters. This slide shows a history of those past bond elections. Last year, we had authorizations passed for public safety and parks and culture.
And just to remind the council, I'll just say this, it's maybe not as obvious just from this chart, but we didn't actually start issuing secondary property tax bonds till 2008. So there's nothing before that. That's the first time that it was voter approved to approve secondary property tax.
Do we have any pre-2008 left, or have we paid that off?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, but we wouldn't be able to use the
Authorization.
secondary property tax to pay for it. It has to be
That's
paid
correct.
for out of general fund dollars.
Mr. Brady is correct. Okay, so this chart shows Mesa's total property values over the past 10 years as provided by the county assessor. Just as a reminder, there are two values assigned to each parcel. There's the limited property value, which is the statutory value for tax purposes, and that's what we levy against. And then there's the full cash value, which shows the capacity for future growth in the limited property value. And generally speaking, a parcel's limited property value may not increase more than 5% annually, and it may not exceed its full cash value.
So just quickly, Mayor and Council, what this means, this is a really good chart, again, go back to our presentations to the bond rating agencies, because we show them that the full cash value is significantly above what is used for the establishment of the property tax, right? What's available to the city. Yet the green bar, the limited property tax value, as Mark just mentioned, cannot increase by more than 5% in a year, right? You did the calculation, what was it, Mark? So even if the full cash value just froze and never increased again.
So, Mr. Brady, so even if the full cash value, total full cash value flattened out, there would be enough capacity in that full cash value for the limited property value to increase annually at 5% for the next 13 years.
So, which is a huge, like, a capacity to show where there's not a problem if there's a downturn in the economy with property values, which hasn't happened, as you can tell, for many years. But it just gives that assurance, of course, because nationally that can be an issue in other areas. But that the difference between those two is significant. That's why you also see that the green bar is just a slowly steady rise, but it's because it's limited, it's capped at that 5% growth. So,
Ms. Pillsbury.
Yeah, that essentially answered my question, but so that it could be even equal with full cash value? It just can't go over it?
Mayor, Councilmember Spilsbury, that is correct.
yeah, theoretically, that's correct, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so the city's total taxable property value increased 5.5% this year to $5.2 billion. So the city is proposing that that tax rate remain unchanged. This would result in a levy of $44.3 million. And as mentioned before, the annual cost of the median homeowner would be $160.
So $8 increase for the median homeowner in Mesa for the year. And that's just a consequence of just values rising in people's homes and across the board.
I guess the question is, what's the median cost of the homeowner for the $8 increase?
you remember what that was based off of, Mark, when you did use that number, what that number was?
The $8 increase? or
No,
the
the
160?
homeowner's value to get to the $8, to get to $160.
Mayor, Mr. Brady, it was about $360,000 for the median homeowner.
Sounds about right.
I'm sorry? I'm sorry?
It would be she's asking whether it'd be the limited property value.
That is correct.
Because that's the one they use.
For the
For the
taxable
calculation of
calculation.
taxes. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
So on the previous slide, I did mention that the total taxable property value did increase 5.5%. So what made up that increase? 44% of that increase was due to new property being added to the tax roll, and 56% was due to existing property that appreciated in taxable value.
That's good news, right? All that new growth coming into the city keeps adding to the overall assessed value, and they begin to absorb some of that levy also as part of the
Liability.
Yep.
Ms. Spilsbury?
So just as a reminder, because I remember this has been one of like the hardest concepts to grasp on my term, and I understand it way better than I used to, but what, on the graph, the previous page, what does the city have control of?
Which one, are you at the bar chart or the?
Yeah, the 5, yeah. Do we?
Oh, 5.
So we can raise the tax rate if we needed to get to that different number. The taxable property value is just what it is? Or is that a number that we can do something with?
No, well, it's a number given to us by the
County
county.
assessor.
Now, what we do about it is we do economic development, right? We bring in new
Right.
development, but we don't determine that. That is sent to Mark. Mark gets that number. And then what we know is this, right? We know how much, and remember, secondary property tax is only related to the bond debt, right? For the projects that have been voter approved, where we have indicated that there's going to be a property tax, a needed property tax increase to support those projects. So what we now know, Mark goes to Irma and says, okay, Irma, how much money are we going to need? How much the payment that we need for this next year? And then Mark uses the property value, and then he calculates what that rate's going to be to generate that payment for the year. We'll call it the levy. And what's the good news is the rate doesn't have to change in order to generate the amount that we need to pay off the debt for next year. Pretty close, Mark?
Mr. Brady, that's correct.
So we can hold the tax rate as it is because of the increase in the taxable property value.
Right.
That's what's the $8.
Right, and then there's a
increase.
little, and there's because across the board, everybody knows it, right? Values have been going up. And so luckily for us, it seems that the value in the home residential, the homeowners is going up, but not significant enough that it, even with that, those increases and holding the rate steady, it's a nominal impact of their costs. But obviously, across the board, it would suggest there's still rising property values, which you still want, right? You still want, maybe not a lot more than this, but something like this.
So when the tax levy number doesn't cover what we need it to cover, that's when we adjust the tax rate,
That would be correct.
right?
Mayor, Councilmember
Looking at
Spilsbury,
Kenny, he's worked with me a lot on this to help me.
Yeah,
understand
that's
this,
correct.
so.
That would be correct. So if we got to the point where the values came in and we know the answer to how much we need to make the payment
Yeah.
on all the outstanding debt. So Irma gives us that number, county gives us the property value number. Mark then does the math and says, okay, what does the rate need to be to cover that cost?
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Adams?
Well, it makes sense to me. I'm recalling back that most of these bond elections have passed by substantial margins, and I think this is reasonable. Voters have approved these bonds. Voters are aware of how these bonds are retired, and again, I think most of these have passed by 60, 65, almost 70%
And
approval margins, so I'm comfortable with it.
And I think if we were to go back, because we're pretty conservative on the brochures we send out about how much the levy is going to be for the average homeowner. I mean, I think if anything, we're below it. I'm not gonna say dramatically, but it's not, this number is not, if you took the accumulation of all the, outstanding debt, I'm pretty sure we're below whatever we said we thought it might be, cost the taxpayers. And so when people complain about the number, I always say, well, 60% of the voters approved it. It's not, I mean, you can get stuck on the number, but what they wanted were the projects, and they're willing to pay $160 a year to have parks, fire stations, libraries, all those things. They're willing to pay. And think about what you pay in your homeowners, association, and this goes to the mayor's affordable homeowner or affordable housing, right? At $2,200 a year.
$2,200.
This is included in that calculation also.
Well, and we haven't even issued all the bond debt either. I mean,
No, of
we're
course
still
not.
holding bonds, and so
They'll come
we're
in-
just
they're
paying for
coming.
the bonds that have been issued today in the
Right.
past.
But we have a schedule. Mark works
Yeah.
with everybody to try to look at the timing, and we try to work to kind of smooth the increase. It's coming, it keeps increasing, but we've got a chart that tries to smooth it and manage it so there's not big spikes in that either.
And Mr. Brady, that goes into how we kind of structure the future debt.
Right,
as well.
exactly.
Continue on. Thanks.
Okay, so I think this chart is a good example of some of the stuff we've talked about. So this chart shows the 5-year history of the city's tax levy and tax rate, and it includes the current proposal. The tax rate is the red line, and as you can see, it's dropped slightly from several years ago, and with the proposal, it would be a consistent rate for 3 consecutive years.
So that's the good news. The county's always bragging about how they're adjusting their rates or keeping them low. We're just keeping it steady, so people can kind of know what that looks like.
And lastly, here are the important dates. So on Monday, there will be a public hearing on the budget and property tax levy, and the council will consider the final adoption of the budget. And then 2 weeks later, the council will consider adopting the levy with no proposed increase to the tax rate. So this concludes the presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Council, any more questions? Mr. Radia?
Quick question. What was the rates the last 2 years?
It would be the Mayor, Councilmember Heredia, the tax rate was the same, so it was 8,582, I think. Let me see if I can go back.
Yep. You got it.
Yeah,
Remain the
it's about
same.
85
wanna-
cents per $100 of taxable property value.
I want to say it was a couple dollars less, right? Or I think
Councilman, you're now-
was it less?
Yeah, so you're talking about not the rate's the same, your values may have adjusted. So I don't remember what the median homeowner number was, Mark. Do you know what that might have been the last couple of years? How
When you
much
say median homeowner, you talk about the median homeowner value of the,
The 160, the cost. This year's 160, last year was 152.
I'm
Do you know
not
what the number
sure.
was before that?
I'm not.
I don't remember it being, I think it's only been in less
I thought
than
it was
$10.
144 or something like
Yeah.
that.
It's been within $10 or so, I think, every year. Does that make sense, Councilmember?
Yeah. I want to say it was a couple dollars, right? A couple
Maybe.
of dollars more or less, right?
Less,
So
yeah.
it just to make the point of the investments of how we've been building libraries and parks and other facilities and improvements, infrastructure. Just a couple of dollars has given us the ability to invest for the future for our neighborhoods and communities, right? So just to make that point.
Good.
Well, I think to add on to that, we're going to be building fire stations and police headquarters and issuing bonds for that.
Yep, we'll
Correct.
be paying for those, yep.
So there'll be future increase, but not much. Any other questions? All right. Mr. Hute, you're off the hook early. Thank you. Next, we'll hear a presentation on item 2B on Mesa's opioid settlement funds. Lindsay and your team.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So Mayor and council members, I'm Lindsay Belinkie. I am the city's Community Services Deputy Director. And we are really focusing today on opioid settlement funds. Deanna Lopez is with me here today. She is one of our human services coordinators that has really been working on some initiatives related to these funds. We also wanted to give a shout out to Chase Carlisle and Amanda Freeman for supporting this project too. They've contributed greatly. So as a reminder, we were here in November talking to you about our settlement funds. And this is just an overview of how this came to be. So there is a national opioid settlement, and there's $50 billion across 10 settlements. And those funds are distributed over 18 years. Those then flow down into Arizona. The One Arizona Agreement was created to dictate how Arizona uses those funds, and we receive in the state $1.12 billion. Within our county, Maricopa County Public Health Department administers those funds to the cities, and that includes the Mesa share, which is 6.06% of the county allotment. We've also really leaned into the county to provide some direction and best practices and collaboration with other cities so that we're not unnecessarily duplicating efforts, and that when possible, we're working together regionally on some of this and getting some guidance from them. The county has provided a needs assessment, for example, where they surveyed stakeholders from the community, including Mesa, and so we've relied on their data and input for that. We have received $4.5 million to date, and so today we really wanted to talk about first the areas in which the eligible activities fall, and this again is from the One Arizona Agreement. And so you can see there's 4 different categories here: prevention and education, early intervention and treatment, harm reduction and rescue, as well as recovery and resiliency. So we are working within these categories within all the activities that we'll be talking about today. In the fall, in November, we did get direction to move forward with these 3 categories. And so what we're doing right now is working with the funds that we have available and creating kind of a phase 1 approach. We do receive money over 18 years. And so what we're doing now is just talking about this year, how we will utilize these dollars. And the categories are community education and outreach. $1 million is dedicated to that area. $1 million for public safety and $1 million for a community grant program and support, $1.1 million. The $0.1 is to support our administrative tasks in managing all of those grants. So within community education and outreach, we do have our outreach team. We have a street outreach team that really focuses on working with our unhoused community and focusing on opioid education, as well as access to treatment. So some of those funds go to that activity. And then with council input, we have begun to explore an opioid awareness campaign. So one of the directions we got was really to make the youth a priority in utilizing these funds. And so we have talked to the Education and Workforce Roundtable. That includes many Mesa stakeholders in the education field, including Mesa Public Schools, our universities that are here in Mesa, and other stakeholders. So we've gotten a lot of input from that group.
And what has come out of that group is that they would like to see a digital content that leverages existing platforms. So that may look like schools that have systems in place already where students have to log in and receive educational content. That maybe a campaign, a little video would pop up before that as they're logging in. And so just to introduce the content into various platforms of that nature. The parents have a platform as well in elementary Mesa Public Schools, as well as we would look at social media and other platforms where we could really have a far reach with this content that's developed. It would be age appropriate messaging for youth K through 12, and we may even go older than that. We are working with ASU and Benedictine and community colleges too to see if we can include them and have some beyond 12th grade messaging too, and then parents and families as well. So we see this as a all-encompassing awareness campaign. And with direction today, if we receive that to move forward, we envision that this would be developed over the summer and launch in the fall of 2025. We do have the category for public safety as well, and so again, $1 million is dedicated to this category, and this is really to support public safety opioid-related initiatives. To date, we have the Mesa Police Department that is in the process of purchasing a drug incinerator, as well as a body scanner. And then they are also exploring, this is for both police and fire and other related activities, really exploring other programming options that they can utilize these funds to within initiatives that are related to opioids. So this is really under development, and we envision coming back with more details when we have them for this category. The biggest part of our presentation today is community grants. And so Deanna has been working hard on that, and she's going to give you an update on where we are with those.
Yes, so Deanna Lopez again. So the Community Grants Program was created to support some of the efforts addressing opioid-related issues in Mesa. Our staff proposed to set aside the $1 million to support some of these community grants. As we said, 100 of these are dedicated to administrative costs, meaning the expenses that are, aside with managing the awarded grants. Part of our eligible criteria, you'll see we were applicants had to be registered 501c3 nonprofit agencies, and the minimum award was set aside for $50,000 per grant. This allowed more flexibility in how programs were carried out, and we did prioritize our youth as the direction that we received, and then all of these agencies must serve Mesa residents and must align with at least one of the funding priorities that you saw in the previous slides. Before we get further in, deeper into the grants itself, we wanted to showcase our timeline since we last met with you all. So in February, we released the Notice of Funding Availability and held our first agency kickoff grant meeting. The application period opened in February and closed mid-March. After the deadline, reviewed all the submitted applications, and in April, met with all the qualified agencies to hear their presentations and score their proposals. That brings us to today, and we're here to present our funding recommendations and hopefully get your approval to move forward. And then with your support we plan to execute the contracts in June. Here you'll see an overview. We wanted to make you aware of the number of applications that we received during this period. So 27 total applications were received, with 19 of them focused specifically on youth, in alignment with the grant priorities, which was youth services. One of the agencies did not meet the eligible requirements, while 26 of them were invited to come back and present to us. We did want to intentionally meet with all these agencies because this is new to us. We wanted to know what resources were available within the community and kind of know how they work. They're supporting impacting the community. As you see, although this was a $1 million grant, we did receive over $4 million in total requests. All right. Our next slide will show our funding recommendations. We are recommending and allocating some of these in 3 focus areas. You'll see our neonatal care, school-based programs, and our community-based programs. Recommendations were based on proposals that met all the required qualifications and clearly aligned with our goals of this grant. We engage in collaborative planning to ensure selected organizations would complement existing services and directly respond to known needs in schools and communities. The selection of these agencies also were based on established presence and capacity within the focused areas. So on our neonatal care, you'll see we are recommending for $115,000. Jacob's Hope is one of those agencies that we're recommending for $315,000. They provide support for substance exposed newborns, ensuring that mothers and families receive the help they need without the fear of separation. They are supporting this through their Crisis to Care Recovery Program, and along with this, this grant will support some marketing awareness initiatives to be able to outreach some of those expecting mothers. Our next agency is Hushabye Nursery for $100,000. They are continue to provide holistic approach into parents affected by opioid use disorder. The funding will expand some of the services that they're already offering to Mesa residents. They also plan to outreach the community with education material, and then also more of an outreach towards Mesa families as well. For our school-based programs, we have Community Bridges for $193,226. This focus is on specifically the Thrive Resiliency Program. This is a 9-session program focusing on evidence-based practices on strengthening behavioral, social, and emotional learning. They are expanding services, so this would cover all 12 Mesa Public Schools and including existing services in Eastmark. The next agency is the Be Kind People Project for $115,000. They support their Power of Prevention initiative, and this is a built-in tier with the program that they already offer, which is the Be Fit, Be Healthy, Be Kind program. This would also support students, parents, and teachers in collaborative approach. This targets middle schools as well. And along with these services, they bring, if you're familiar with this agency, the Be Kind crew, which offers like life assemblies in all the participating schools. For our next categories of community-based programs, Big Brothers Big Sisters of Central Arizona, we're recommending for $100,000. They are expanding some of the mentorship services, the one-on-one matches. Currently, they do have a wait list in Mesa, so they're hoping to open some of those spaces to at least match 36 of those youth. And they do offer training and informative sessions for staff, any of the mentors, youth, and families. Next one is Boys and Girls Club of the Valley for $83,862. They are implementing youth resiliency for opioid prevention project in all 3 Mesa locations. And along with this, they're incorporating other material known as Positive Action and Smart Moves. These are just add-on programs that support emotional wellness and promote health. And our last agency is Not My Kid for $100,000. This agency will continue to offer parent education, youth programming through their Inspire 90-day program. They are designated to support youth in dealing with substance challenges, and they also help connect to any long-term recovery networks. An add-on to this agency is Family Navigation Services to support them in connecting with other resources. And that adds up to just a little over $1 million.
All right, Mayor and Council, so the next steps is to receive your direction to proceed with community grant recommendations and the education campaign. You will see on the 2nd, on Monday, June 2nd, an approval for a resolution to authorize the distribution of funds for this purpose for the nonprofit organizations. And then we anticipate soon after that, we'll begin to execute the community grants as well as the education campaign and see these activities coming out potentially this summer, but definitely into the fall school year.
Great, Lindsay, thank you. Ms. Spilsbury, I know you have something to say.
I do. And I met with you guys for an hour and asked you lots and lots and lots of questions. So I just want to maybe reiterate some of those points or ask a few more questions. First of all, I'm really excited about the digital campaign, awareness campaign. I am excited to see what the committee comes up with for that and what we can do. That's something I have felt all along that we need to be doing. So I'm excited about that and the people that we have working on it. So just wanted to say that. With the grant applications, can you just talk about how you went and met with Mesa Public Schools and talked about which programs would be a good fit? Because I wanted to see a lot more in Mesa Public Schools, and 300,000 is great. I wanted to see more. So just kind of talk about, because I know we had a lot more applications than this. So just kind of talk about that process.
Yes, Mayor and Councilmember Spilsbury, thank you for that question. We did receive several applications. As Deanna mentioned, there were 19 total for youth, and several of those were based in partnerships with Mesa Public Schools. And so we did go and meet with them to discuss, will these fit into your current platforms? Do they make sense in the way they're being proposed? And so we had a really good discussion with them. And what they told us was they wanted to focus some of their efforts on middle school, that they thought that was a really important age in which to provide this type of education. And then there were some that weren't quite a good fit based on other circumstances. And so that's where we really focused as well on community-based programs and getting some of those activities in other agencies. Not My Kid, additionally, they'll focus on charter schools, community centers, faith-based agencies to really get that citywide approach that we were hoping for and that we've been asked to provide. And in addition to this, that layering that education campaign on top, we feel like is a good filter for all of this, and the age ranges that we're able to accommodate with the newborns all the way into college age children. So that is, I don't know if that answers all of your questions.
Yeah, no, and I mean, we talked about this at length. So, but I just for anyone watching or whatever, just wanted to kind of, add a little bit more context to that. I love the community-based programs. It's going to be limited to the people who know about those programs or who already attend those programs, right? But I love the outreach to charter schools and stuff like that too. On the school-based programs, I was happy to see Eastmark was added in there. As most people know, we have Higley, Gilbert, and Queen Creek schools in the city of Mesa, and I wanted to make sure those kids were all covered as well. And because those superintendents sit on our roundtable, having that discussion, and those are also Mesa kids that we care about. So, I of course would love to see a little bit more robust programming into the junior highs and high schools, but this is a good place to start. I guess remind me, I know we have a lot of money coming still in the future. We don't exactly know how much and when. So are we thinking this grant cycle, we'll kind of see how it goes and then see what money we have next year to see if we can do it again? And it would just open up to new people again at that point? Or would we try to continue programs if they're going really well? What's the thought process there?
Yes, Mayor and Councilmember, thank you. Yes, so this is the beginning of where we are focusing our efforts and really kind of identifying what works best. And we will get reports and data from these programs and contracts. And so we don't anticipate that we would have a maybe as big of a grant program in the future, just because we are using at least $3 million of those dollars now, and then it'll be about $1 million going forward each additional year. So we are just trying to create a significant impact right now and then see what works and come back to you for further guidance in the future.
Okay, so there's no guarantee that any of these would continue after this year, and they all are aware of that.
That's right, Councilmember Mayor. These are one-year grants, and we've been really clear about that we're trying to invest in opportunities that will make an impact, but not be dependent on these grants long-term. And we've heard from some of the agencies that this will help some of them expand their services, and then they have a plan to keep them going with other funding opportunities. And so that may be an option as well that we see moving forward.
Okay, great. I'm really excited about this. I think everyone knows this is a topic and issue that I feel very passionate about. And I wanted, is it okay if we show the 2 support slides with the map and then the bar graph? I just think those are important for people to see what's going on in our city, so.
Yes, Mayor and
Just go over
Council
those two.
Member. So we have data. I know. You want to go back to
No
the
one's
first
doing
one
anything
first?
in your district.
So this is Mesa Fire medical data on calls that are related to suspected opioid overdose incidents. It does show a citywide impact. There are some areas that are more impacted than others, but you can see those lighter blue dots are incidents, and they pretty much cover the entire city with the exception of a few areas. The next slide is showing these incidents by age. And so you can see as young as 0 to 14, Mesa residents are impacted. So, and then that peak as the 20-year-olds and into 30-year-olds really peak activity. And so that's where we've really decided, and because of the community needs assessment and other input we've had on data, as well as input from schools and other stakeholders, that having those interventions early on with evidence-based programs is really where it's recommended that we focus those efforts with youth.
Okay,
To
great.
try to impact some of this data that you're seeing
I just
here.
thought those 2 slides were important for people to see. And just to also clarify, an opioid overdose does not mean a death.
That's correct,
Necessarily,
Councilmember.
so it could, but it doesn't mean
Yes,
that.
Mayor and Councilmember, there is a link on this slide, which is available through our city website. If people are interested in more data, that link is there, and it will show you some of those other impacts by year and a little bit more of a breakdown of this data if people are interested.
Thank you. And I know we've been trying to, we've been talking about it for a while of what the best way to move forward with this money is and what's the best, biggest impact we can have on our community. And there's been a lot of talk and a lot of work that's been done on this. So thank you so much for answering all my questions and trying to make something happen sooner than later. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Heredia, do you have any questions?
I think my comment is just on identifying kind of the evaluation of these grants is going to be important, especially in the outreach pieces, just to ensure that we have impact in this money that we're providing to some of these nonprofits and ensuring that we have that data that's impacting Mesa residents, and then learning from that to build upon in future years. I think that was my comment when we met. The other piece, I don't know, I think I asked as well, the use of Narcan as not sure if any of these grants, I've seen some good information as far as the use of Narcan or having that availability to be a thing that saves lives. And so I know it's not a preventative piece, but I think, it's been shown to be an item that really helps saves lives in this case. So just something to add further as we look into funding further outreach.
Yes, Mayor and Councilmember Heredia, thank you for that input. We do have some programs that are integrating Narcan distribution, and we also have our Mesa Fire Medical that have that available and utilize that as well outside of these funds, but they have received that and integrated that into their services as well.
I think PD has it too. You guys have it?
Oh, yeah. Everybody.
PD has it too.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Adams?
Well, this is a very, very challenging and very troubling subject, so I appreciate everything you're working on here. I think it's important that, and I'm getting the sense that this money is being focused on intervention before addiction, early education. I think that's important because after addiction, it's a whole nother set of issues, as we all know. I was happy to hear that there's coordination between adjoining cities and jurisdictions. I think that's a good idea, that we know what our sister cities and organizations and agencies are doing so that we're reinforcing as opposed to duplicating. I'm thinking that, and maybe you've done this, in evaluating those, 26 applications, was your evaluation data-driven? Did you look at organizations that can show data that they're being successful and they can document that and identify where their programs are having an effect? Or are these proposals that we hope will have an effect? And how do you plan to evaluate the effectiveness of the organizations that we've chosen to, that you've chosen to recommend for grants? How are we going to measure that? How do we know who's having a real impact as opposed to, we've got a great program and we hope it works? A lot of questions, but I
Yes,
apologize.
Mayor and Councilmember Adams, thanks for that very easy question. We did ask for that information if there was an existing program with data related in the applications, and we will, as we develop the contracts and the scope of work with the agencies, really ask for how they will prove and show the impact of these programs. Some of them are existing and they are deemed successful by those that are receiving them. There are some before and after surveys when people receive. Some are specific services that will be an obvious impact. Others are educating children, and we're trying to layer many layers of education and preventative actions. And so it will be, it may be difficult in some circumstances to show over time what that impact is, but we will integrate that into all of our contracts and really do our best to have those agencies tell that story.
I think that's important because you have a limited amount of money here and you want to get the greatest impact on the community. Again, a real tough problem. I've been around long enough to remember Nancy Reagan's war on drugs. So we've been fighting this for as long as I can remember. We have to do something, and I think what you're proposing is probably the best thing we can put together on the intervention side that I'm aware of. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Pillsbury?
If I could just make a point too, I think prevention type measures are extremely hard to have data and statistics around, right? I mean, that's part of the problem with this. I mean, you can have the surveys or whatever to say, like, does it feel like this helped or whatever, but other than like this many kids in our junior high were doing drugs and now they're not, I mean, or this many were going to do it and now they're not going to do it. I mean, it's really, really hard to quantify in any real measurable way. But we all know it works. Like, we know that education makes a difference, and when kids understand the dangers of these pills and taking over-the-counter pills that they think are safe and then they're laced with fentanyl, or just a lot of the education around it, I think can make a huge difference. Much harder to actually get data around that. So I just wanted to acknowledge the challenge in that. We're going to try. We'll try.
Yes, thank you very much.
Any other questions? I have a couple to go through. Charter schools play a significant impact in our community. And when I look at the bar graph of those being impacted by opioid use, it's, from 19 to 34-year-olds roughly, and that has the biggest impact in our community. How can we reach out to them? And maybe that's community college. We have MCC here. Have we reached out to them? I don't know if you have, and have them play in that. But we have so many charter schools in our community that they need. Have you access them too?
Yes, Mayor. So one of our community-based programs will focus on engaging charter schools. And we are within the educational workforce roundtable. MCC, Benedictine, and ASU are part of that discussion and getting that education campaign to college-age students. So that is a great idea, and we are pursuing it.
Well, thank you. And I'm sure, it seems to me we're taking the opioid manufacturers' legal drugs that have become illegally used, and we're applying those monies into programming to help benefit our community to get away from addiction. So just moving over to the public safety part of it, I think in the future, look at additional funding mechanisms for our public safety personnel to police in general, and how to combat illegal drug use in our community, and whether that's on the streets or in the homes, selling illegal drugs, prescription drugs, things like that. So I know we're doing that, but that'd be one thing I'd like to suggest in the future. So,
Thank you.
Council, anything else? Okay, Mr. Adams is excused. You're excused as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. With that, item 3 is to acknowledge the receipt of minutes. Can I have a motion to do that? Thank you, Ms. Goforth. Ms. Spilsbury, all in favor say aye. 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 Okay, motion passes unanimously. Next is current events and conferences attended. Council members, would you like to share anything?
We haven't done it in a couple of weeks. So I have a lot of things, but I don't.
Share what you like.
I'll just start. I'm just going to cover this last week. It's too, and I don't want to talk too long. On Thursday, I attended a community conversation about the arts in East Valley at the Mesa Main Library. It's part of the Arizona Commission on the Arts outreach about the impact of arts on our community and developing their strategic plan. It was a really good conversation, and I appreciate the efforts there. On Friday, I attended the Mesa Contemporary Arts Summer Opening Reception. Dr. Ruth Tan Lim was recognized for her dedication to the arts, and one of the significant people in the last 20 years. We're recognizing 20 people for our 20th anniversary. She's one of them. So we did a recognition there. As far as the museum itself is filled with exhibitions of glassworks. It's tremendous. I recommend seeing it. There is downstairs before you enter the galleries, there is one right near the Dobson Room. It's an immersive gallery, and it's one room that's dedicated to one piece that's by Kazuki Takazawa, and it's a glass table that he created with glasses on top, and has created an installation of water dripping into the cups of the table and spilling. It's really mesmerizing and quite incredible. It's called Breaking the Silence. I attended a talk on Sunday in which he gave. It's related to suicide prevention and the elements that he created and the emotions out of that. I am so thankful to have all these arts resources in our city. I was thinking about that when I was sitting in the talk. Here I am, blocks from where I live, sitting in these artists that is from California who came and talked about it and seeing all the phenomenal art. We are so blessed. And thank you to all the citizens who have supported the Art Center as well as the museums. And what we have here is just incredible. I'm very thankful to have this right in the heart of Mesa. On Saturday, I attended Oakwood Creative Care's 50th birthday celebration at the Piper Theater. It was in 70s style. The residents sang a lot, and they had a band. It was lots of fun, and I want to congratulate them on their 50th anniversary, 50th birthday, and they have several locations throughout Mesa. Yesterday, Councilmember Spilsbury and I attended the Arizona Pro Housing Policy Forum. It was at the Collective in Phoenix. Former Mayor Giles was on one of the panels. It was an in-depth view of the factors that contribute to the shortage of housing. Some key things that were identified that we can do is in our local reform, things that we can do within our zoning, focusing on missing middle housing, and that we actually need additional federal vouchers are key to being able to help more people with housing. So that's the bulk of what I've done this past week. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna go back a little bit, but we did have another class graduate from our firefighter, our Mesa Regional Firefighter Recruit Academy, class 25-1. And I feel like we're always going to a firefighter graduation or a police graduation, which just shows how much resources the city has poured into making sure we have the people that we need in our city to protect us and to help us. And I will never not be inspired by these men and women who decide to go into this profession, and I love it. Yeah, I mean, it's really, really inspiring because I wouldn't do it, so. And then I had the really great opportunity to speak at a graduation ceremony for Mesa Public Schools adult education high school equivalency program. There was about 20 adults that graduated with their high school equivalency, and to hear some of their stories and just how hard it is for some of these people to make it, to be able to get this education, and the sacrifices that they have to make and the challenges they've had in their life was really inspiring. I also wanted to mention we kicked off our Mesa Hydration donation campaign with United Food Bank and the Mesa Chamber. The goal is 500,000 water bottles and $40,000 in donations. We've been doing lots of social media posts on that and really asking the community to help in donating water or money to go towards water. You can visit our city website to find out all of the drop-off locations or to donate online. I also had to mention that we have an incredible thing that has happened here in Mesa. Bezos Academy partnered with Mesa Public Schools and they're opening up 3 centers this fall. One is at Fremont, O'Connor, and Poston are the 3 schools where they are co-locating with Mesa Public Schools, and it's free preschool for 3- and 4-year-olds, and really just an incredible program that they're offering. And our community, there are lots of cities begging Bezos to come to their cities, and we just feel really grateful that we got them, and that they're going to expand even more. But we're really excited about those. The communities around those preschools are super excited. And then our Northeast Public Safety Facility ribbon cutting was huge and exciting. And if you haven't been out there, go check it out. It's a new fire station and police headquarters right there. It's beautiful. It's brand new. It's going to open up this summer, right? I don't know if we have the exact date, but this summer we'll be going, and it's really going to absolutely affect that part of the valley, especially districts 5 and 6, but also mine, because mine goes into that area as well. So we're really excited about that and all the work that was done there. And then one more thing, we had a coffee with a cop at Red Mountain Cafe last week with Councilmember Adams and I. And I just want to really thank our police department for the incredible outreach that they are constantly doing to our community, to be with the people, to talk, hear the concerns and questions. And I just think they do a really great job of trying to be out in the community, and evidenced by those types of events. So I wanted to thank them for that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Vice Mayor.
I will just make one quick comment. Congratulations to all the graduates, high school, college. I had the opportunity to give the commencement address at ALA Applied Tech High School. These are kids that are going to go right into the workforce. I think that's my first commencement address. I don't often get to pull out my academic regalia, so I had to get an iron for that, but it was worth it. So congratulations to everybody that graduated. Thank you, Mayor.
Oh, you're welcome. I'll just finish. I went to Coffee the Cop too. That was really great over there at Red Mountain. Attended the State of the City address with Mayor Gallego, and that was a fun event. We've had some retirements. Beth Huning's retirement this past week, and then we have another retirement coming up in a couple of days. Anybody know who it is?
Oh, we all know.
So with that, I just wanted to thank you, Mr. Brady, for all you've done. I know this is one of your last and only study session, so on Thursday today, and appreciate that. And again, I think we should give him a round of applause and give him thanks for everything he's done. Here's your chance, last party words.
No, I mean, Mayor, more has been said than needed to be said for the last three.
2.5 hour funeral.
Yeah,
we had
it
on
was,
Tuesday.
but I just thank you again. And Mayor and Council, thank you for the privilege and honor to work as a city manager in this great city of Mesa. We have a great team. You have made the right choice for my successor. He has a great team, and you see the dedication. You hear the compassion of the employees. The people who choose to work in local government aren't just your regular people. These are people that come with purpose and want to make a difference. So it's been my privilege to serve with them these many years. I am excited for the future of Mesa. It's bright, it's hopeful, and I'm very excited. So take care of it. And as I said, do it together. That's the Mesa doing, together Mesa is important. So enjoy your meeting on Monday, and I'll be there for the first part, just to watch for the swearing in, make sure it gets done. And then, yeah, exactly. But thank you very much, Mayor. It's been an honor. Thank you.
All right, gracias and adios on your. With that, Council, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Duff, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Councilmember Radio. Okay, we're done. Thank you, everyone.